Ly Tu Diem here. Hello everyone. I sincerely wish you all good health and peace in every corner of your life. Sometimes, the smallest presence brings the greatest miracle. For CEO Toan and me, that miracle came in the form of a tiny voice, calling out to us, Mommy, Daddy. In that sacred moment, the world stood still. All the pain, all the past faded into the joy of being called a parent. The morning sunlight filtered gently through the faded white curtains, dancing on the wooden floor of the small, peaceful home. A soft giggle echoed from the corner where baby Sue was playing with a worn-out stuffed rabbit. The house, once filled with silence and memories of pain, now felt alive with laughter, warmth, and the quiet magic only a child could bring. Toan sat at the edge of the bed, pretending to read the newspaper, but his eyes were fixed on the little miracle crawling on the floor. Ly Tu Diem, still in her apron, peeped from the kitchen, smiling softly, her heart full yet trembling as if she was afraid to believe this happiness was real. For a long time, both had wandered in darkness. Toan, burdened by the weight of responsibility and betrayal. Diem, broken by abandonment, loss, and a life that rarely offered comfort. They never imagined that a child not even their own by blood would be the one to lead them back into the light. Then it happened. One tiny voice, shaky but clear, called out, Ma. The word floated through the air, soft as wind, loud as thunder. Diem dropped the spoon she was holding. Her hands trembled as she slowly turned toward Sue. Toan stood frozen, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Sue, holding her rabbit, looked up and reached out her chubby arms. Ma. Pa. Tears welled up in Diem's eyes. She knelt down, arms wide open. Yes, baby, I'm here. Mama's here, she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. Toan joined her, wrapping both Diem and Sue in his arms. He didn't say anything he didn't need to. His silence spoke louder than words. Because in that single moment, everything changed. They were no longer the people helping each other survive. They were a family. A real one, not because of a name, or a paper, or shared blood, but because a child had looked into their eyes and without hesitation called them Mama and Papa. The miracle wasn't just Sue's first words. It was what those words healed, the doubts, the fears, the emptiness they both had carried for far too long. Later that evening, the warm glow of lantern light filled the cozy kitchen. Diem stirred the soup gently while Sue sat in Toan's lap, playing with his shirt buttons and occasionally looking up to giggle. Toan couldn't stop smiling. Each tiny laugh from the baby felt like a note in a song he had never known his heart was missing. He rested his chin on Sue's head and whispered, You don't even know what you've given us, do you, little one? From across the kitchen, Diem watched the scene unfold. Her heart tightened not from pain, but from the overwhelming rush of love. She had never imagined a life like this, a man who didn't judge her past, a child who didn't care where she came from, a home not of stone, but of connection. After dinner, Toan gently laid Sue in the small bed beside theirs. The baby stirred, reached out a hand in her sleep, and murmured, Pa. Toan froze. He turned to Diem, eyes wide. She said it again, he whispered. Diem nodded, her eyes shining with tears. She knows, she feels it, we're her parents now. That night, they didn't sleep much, not because of worrying or fear like before, but because they stayed up watching the baby breathe, holding each other in a silence that spoke more than words ever could. The next few days were filled with small wonders. Sue started saying Ma every time Diem entered the room, lifting her tiny arms up, asking to be held. Toan would sneak toys into her hands when Diem wasn't looking, pretending he didn't spoil her, though everyone knew otherwise. And then, one morning at the market, As Diem carried Sue in a cloth sling, a woman smiled at them and said, "What a beautiful little family you have." Diem paused. She looked at Sue, then at Toan, who was choosing vegetables nearby, and then she smiled. "Yes," she replied, "we really are." That simple affirmation felt like a chapter closing and another beginning. A past left behind, a future no longer feared. And in the middle of it all, a little girl who spoke their names and stitched their broken pieces together. They weren't perfect, they still had wounds. But they were no longer alone. They were a miracle, built not by chance but by choice, compassion, and unconditional love. The days passed gently. The seasons began to shift. The breeze was cooler now, rustling the trees outside their modest home. Every morning, Toan would leave early to check on the construction site, and every evening, he'd return to the sound of Sue's joyful squeals echoing from the doorway. Ly Tu Diem would wait with the baby in her arms, waving as Toan approached. It was a small ritual, but one that made their hearts full. One evening, as they sat on the front steps watching the sunset, Sue nestled between them. Diem turned to Toan and asked quietly, "Did you ever think we'd become a family like this?" Toan looked at her, his expression soft and reflective. "Honestly, no. I didn't think I deserved it." He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "But then you walked into my life, and then she did." He glanced down at the baby now resting her head on his leg, eyes fluttering as sleep crept in. And somehow, all the broken pieces just started fitting together. Diem leaned against him. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I didn't want Sue to grow up like I did. Afraid, unloved, forgotten." Toan placed his hand over hers. "She won't, not while I'm still breathing." A gust of wind passed by, and Sue stirred, mumbling sleepily, "Ma, Pa." They both looked down, smiling through quiet tears. In the days that followed, something began to shift inside Diem. She found herself dreaming again, not just of survival, but of stability, joy, and laughter. She started planting flowers by the front porch, humming lullabies while cooking, even laughing out loud at Toan's silly attempts to change diapers. One rainy night, after Sue had fallen asleep, Toan brought out a small, crumpled envelope. "I've been keeping this," he said. "I wrote it months ago, but I never had the courage to give it to you." He handed it to Diem. Inside was a simple note. "Diem, if the day ever comes when you feel safe again, when you believe in family, in love, in yourself, I hope you'll let me walk beside you, not as a man who wants to rescue you, but as someone who wants to live life with you. You and Sue are my miracle." Diem covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. She looked up at Toan and said softly, "The day, it's already here." And in that moment, neither of them needed to say anything more. Love had arrived not in grand gestures, but in quiet choices, in everyday moments, in a baby's first words, in a shared meal, in choosing to stay. Emotional life lesson. Sometimes, the greatest miracles in life are not born from perfection, but from brokenness, gently mended by love, patience, and presence. The story of Toan, Diem, and baby Sue teaches us this: love doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't demand perfection or erase the past. It accepts, embraces, and rebuilds from it. A child's innocent voice calling Ma and Pa may seem like a simple moment, but for two hearts who had lost their way, it was the loudest affirmation that they had found home, not in a place, but in each other. We often chase grand achievements or wait for life to be ideal before we feel whole. But this story reminds us, wholeness can come quietly, in the warmth of a shared meal, in a baby's laugh, or in the courage to love again after pain. Don't be afraid of starting over, of loving again, or of allowing someone into the softest, most wounded parts of your soul. Because healing doesn't always look like fixing. Sometimes it looks like holding hands through the storm and realizing you're no longer alone. In love, presence is everything, and in presence, we find miracles. Love, at its purest, is not measured by grand promises or flawless plans, but by the quiet constancy of showing up. Toan didn't need to be a hero. Diem didn't need to forget her past. And baby Sue didn't need to be born into a perfect family. What transformed their lives was presence, choosing to stay, to care, to believe in each other even when life felt uncertain. This story reminds us that the true power of love is in its ability to create belonging, a place where even the most fragile heart can feel safe. When we let go of fear, pride, and the shadows of our past, we open the door to something greater, the chance to build a new kind of future, one rooted in kindness, trust, and second chances. No act of love is ever wasted, whether it's a gentle hand reaching out in silence or a simple meal shared after a long day. These are the threads that we family, not by blood, but by bond. And in a world that often celebrates speed, success, and status, this story gently whispers, slow down, be present, love deeply. Because sometimes, the smallest voices, like a baby calling ma or pa, carry the deepest truths. In that sacred sound, we are reminded we belong to one another. And that is the greatest miracle of all.